Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to what is actually going to be our final blog post for the academic year. So I'm very excited to be joined today by four amazing colleagues. We're going to be discussing a brand new engaged teaching framework at York University. So it's a model towards moving towards more research informed practice in our teaching. And so our guests today all have either experience with the document or helped co-create the document. And so we're really looking forward to seeing what we have to share today. So maybe we'll just do a quick round of introductions. So maybe I'll just start with Carolyn, if you just want to introduce yourself, what faculty department you're teaching in, and maybe some of the your initial connection to this document.
So as you said, I'm Carolyn Steele. I'm contract faculty in humanities. I was part of the team that created this document, so I've got a vested interest in it. I think it's quite wonderful, both in its process and its completion. I'm also career development coordinator at the university, which means that I work with faculty in a lot of different contexts, trying to embed career relevancy into the curriculum. So on both sides of the house.
Great, thanks. Luca?
So my name is Luca Montana. I am a graduate student with the Faculty of Education at York. In the creation of this document, I have been the student representative, and it's been great being able to share student voice with professors who are interested in bettering the student outlook.
Great, thanks. Natalie.
Great. Thanks, Brian. It's nice to be here. Natalie Neal, early career teaching stream faculty member. I'm an assistant prof teaching stream in the English department. And Carolyn shared this document with me a couple of weeks ago. So I'm still digesting it, but I concur. I think it's a really wonderful document. And I can see myself and others getting a lot of use out of it. So I'm looking forward to talking about it today.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Van Drummel. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Health Policy and Management in the teaching stream. And this document came to me about a year ago, and I'm not sure if someone sent it to me or I stumbled across it. It just landed on my desk, and since then I've been using it for a number of different purposes, for my own teaching, but also other purposes within our department.
Great, thank you. And so what I will do now is I'm going to share my screen and maybe share with you folks this elusive document that we've been referring to for the last couple minutes here. So just to point you where you can find this as well. So our York U Teaching Commons website, right on the main page, we have it nice front and center. What is engaged teaching at York? And we have this model for engaged teaching here. And so this is the document that we are going to be referring to as we discuss. So basically it was set up, lots of authors, lots of co-creators were involved with this process. And really the heart of the model then gets to this quadrant here, and we'll discuss this coming up in the next little while. So why don't I first turn to Carolyn and just ask her, to share some thoughts on, the process and some of the decision making behind this document.
Well, this was a very rich and fruitful collaboration of 11 folks who worked on this for over a year. And it sounds daunting to think, how would you co-construct something with 11 people? But given the breadth and the application we wanted this to have, it was really important to have people involved from the different parts of the university where this document might be of most use. So we had people who were in administrative leadership roles, but involved in experiential education. We had senior level academics, award-winning academics. We had upper level management and administrators there. We had educational developers there. And we had, of course, TAs and people who are just new to their roles as well. So we've got a really nice cross section of people developing this for a cross section of the places in York where teaching happens. And that's not always in a classroom. It's often in a classroom, but not always. And there's enough flexibility and possibility within this model for anyone at York finding themselves in an instructive role at all could benefit, see where their practice fits within this, and perhaps see a way in which their practice could evolve should they want it to. So for people early on in their careers, working down into the practice of teaching and the sharing of teaching in a more casual, starting off isolated, setting up your work, and then later on perhaps sharing that in a more formal way through TIFF or other conferences. So having this cross section of folks at the table, doing the lit review together, reviewing the different typologies that were out there, really thinking through how we wanted this to fit within the York landscape was quite an interesting and iterative process that lasted almost 2 years.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. And just to re-emphasize, so the model itself is set up in these 4 quadrants, right? And so whether it's it's for you to reflect on your own teaching. And so whether your teaching is informed by evidence, as we see in the top section, informed by your own experience in the bottom section, whether it's more private or more public facing. And so, our intent with this model was to make it easy enough and hopefully open enough for faculty to feel like they can move through these quadrants at whatever pace or comfort level or teaching context that best suits them. And so I actually want to ask Luca now, as our student rep on this subcommittee here, for some of his experiences and thoughts with developing this.
Yeah, for sure. So it has been a great opportunity for myself in terms of an experiential learning opportunity being part of this team, especially being a student within the Faculty of Education, where these are concepts that I'm currently looking at. So it's great to see how they're being applied within a post-secondary institution and how our instructors are listening to these theories and wanting to work with them and respond to them, and how we're creating an atmosphere that is responsive of that as well. And what I think really sticks out in this process is the malleability of these quadrants, and how, as Carolyn and Brian, you mentioned earlier, the flexibility within them, and that, it doesn't necessarily talk about a life course perspective within a instructor's career path, that you can find yourself at any of these quadrants within whatever time frame you're at. So that may be within taking on a new course role, within, maybe switching your own interests as a researcher. And it's really just about creating that multidisciplinary outlook that combines what I'm passionate about, education, with all of our disciplinary boundaries.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And so now I'm going to turn to our 2 call them outside faculty members. So those who were not involved with the process of putting this together, who are actually beginning to use this document, to think about how they want to use this document moving forward. So we're very excited to hear what they have to say. So maybe we'll start with Natalie. And so you mentioned that you were just recently introduced to this document, but still intrigued by it. So I just maybe want to get your initial thoughts on what we have here.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And I'm really grateful to my colleagues for putting together this document, all the evident work that went into it. And I am still digesting it and thinking it through, but I really do anticipate it being really useful. And, for example, I can see myself sharing the model with the teaching and learning committees that I'm on, and also with grad students that I'm supervising, my TAs, or TAs and grad students who come to me for advice about teaching. And as an early career teaching stream faculty member, I think the model will be really useful for me personally in helping me stay. And I'm getting to what Luca's point about the flexibility of the model. I love that. I think it will really help me to stay well-rounded in my approaches to teaching, and also help me prepare for the TMP process. But one thing that really stood out for me about the document, and I appreciate it so much, is that it seemed to me that it doesn't, none of the quadrants are prioritized. I thought that was a really good emphasis. So one methodology isn't prioritized over the other, but rather the document, frames them as all equally important and informing each other as fluid or malleable, as Luca said. And I think, my goal as a teaching stream faculty member is to try to kind of work in all quadrants and strike a good balance between the private and the public work and the evidence and experience ends of the continuums, to sort of work in all of them and stay well balanced. So for me, these quadrants will be a really useful guide for that.
Great, thank you, Natalie. And Linda, so my understanding is you have used this document or are starting to use this in your own practice. So I'm just curious to hear how that's working out for you and what you're using it.
Sure. So I can say that when I joined York as a new teaching stream faculty member, my first thoughts were, what should I be doing? I know what I should be doing with respect to preparing for courses and interacting with students, but from a professional development perspective, where are the areas that I need to focus? And then I was fortunate enough to have this document shared with me. And for me, it really set a bit of it's a compass or a North Star for me to understand what are the types of activities that I need to be focusing on at different levels. So, my brain took the 4 quadrants and started to reorganize them into what are the activities in these 4 quadrants that I need to be doing to develop myself as a teaching professional. And then what are the activities and strategies that I need to be incorporating in my teaching practices? So as I am designing courses and delivering courses and interacting with students. And then finally, what are the activities and strategies that I need to be engaging in outwardly in order to share and collaborate on pedagogy and teaching practices with the broader community. And so it has been very helpful to allow me to focus and prioritize what I need to be doing in order to plan for the next couple of years. How do I want to develop myself, develop my courses, and also interact with the community? And it is helpful, I think, for the T&P process because it does highlight, if you use it as an audit tool, it does highlight the areas that you may want to focus on if you want to show yourself to be a well-rounded professional teacher, professional educator. But then also, I think that it maybe sets a framework for demonstrating what teaching excellence looks like. And I'm currently on a hiring committee for a teaching stream position. And we had a discussion at the hiring committee level. What does teaching excellence actually look like? And what are the activities that we would want to see in a teaching portfolio that would demonstrate that someone is working towards teaching excellence? So we use this document to help determine what were the particular activities that we would like to see in a teaching portfolio that would show us, which candidates might be working more towards a well-rounded and evidence-based teaching practice compared to others. So this has been a very useful document in the short period of time that I've been using it.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. And I will actually take just a moment just to scroll down. So yes, we have the quadrant, but we do also get into more explanation as to what some of these terms that we're discussing within the framework as well. So it's not just a visual without any, kind of extra background to it. So we do have, informed by evidence. So each quadrant does have a description involved with it. As well as a little bit some examples and whatnot. So there's a little bit more context than just this one page here that we're showing. So thank you all for those initial thoughts. What I would like to do now is, if you'll indulge me, is spending a couple minutes reflecting on maybe where we are currently within the quadrant, if you're comfortable sharing, and then maybe seeing, if you have any thoughts of where you would like to be. And so I don't mind going first. So I do teach a course, a contract faculty course in the Faculty of Health. And I find myself, I think, more on the left side overall. So I'm definitely more in the private aspect of my teaching. I use some evidence definitely to help inform that, classroom assessment techniques. I've done the instructional skills workshop, but I also have done some, work on my own experience, right? So, just you build on your own experience. So I tend to be more on the left-hand side, probably top and bottom. So a little balance between scholarly and the practice portion. So I have yet to really engage my own teaching with SOTL research, so scholarship of teaching and learning research. But that's definitely something where down the road would be a great opportunity. But so that's where I am right now. I find myself more on that left-hand side of this model. So maybe we'll maybe we'll start and go reverse order here if we want. So maybe I'll let Linda kind of jump back in if she wants to share what she has.
Sure. So I would agree with you, Brian. I am also on the left-hand side, top and bottom. I have found that as I've been working more in the sharing about teaching quadrant, that has actually been initiated externally. So I have had people ask me to present something that I've been doing or to share some information. And so one of the goals that I've set for myself is to actually make that more internally motivated. So for me to seek out opportunities to share some of the teaching that I've been doing, the learnings and the approaches, as opposed to sort of waiting to be asked. And that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. The area in the model that I really have yet to crack is the scholarship of teaching and learning. And so that's a personal goal for me as well, that I've recognized that I tend to focus all of my energy on the left side of the model, and that as I start to develop as a scholar, I need to carve out time and energy and space and resources for scholarship of teaching and learning, because that is a priority for me. I'm interested in that area. I recognize that not all teaching stream faculty might be interested, but for me, that's sort of the next piece that I want to work on.
Great, thank you for sharing. And you make a great time, energy, and space, right? And I think that's the, really one of the keys to moving around this model is, finding that time and building up the energy and creating that space for it. So I really like that description there. Natalie, do you want to share?
I think I'm going to echo both of you. I think I'm pretty firmly situated right now, and equally in practice of teaching and scholarly teaching. So as with both of you on the more private ends of the spectrum. So I'm working on improving my teaching through evidence and experience rather than through sort of dissemination and collaboration quite as much. And now that I think of it, I think part of that is the pandemic is keeping me a little bit more private this year. I'm putting a lot of energy into, developing my teaching in response to my students and reading about best ideas in teaching and trying to sort of absorb that. Definitely, echoing Linda, the formal scholarship of teaching and learning is something I've had less time for and less energy for, especially this last year due to the pandemic. But I'm trying to inch forward to it. So, and again, echoing Linda from before, I really do appreciate the way this model breaks down each of the quadrants into all the different activities. And because I think the goal is to keep developing as a teacher by always trying to be doing some activities in the different quadrants. In terms of my favorite quadrant is sharing about teaching. Like that's the one that I enjoy the most. And it's something I haven't done as much as I'd like because of the pandemic. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Teaching in Focus conference, and I'm so happy to be here today, because we're in that quadrant right now, I guess. But certainly, if I'm honest, because of the pandemic, I haven't been engaging with the communities of practice and so on as much as I would like. So hopefully can get back into into that as things open up a little bit more.
Great, thank you, Natalie. Luca, do you want to share? I know you've done some placements as well, and so I don't want to I'll let you answer your own question, I guess, there.
For sure. So what I think about this, and in being the student representative in the committee that helped form this document, was that I think within all of these quadrants, we see the omnipresence of students and all of this being anchored in the student experience. So I don't think we can have any quadrant without considering the students if we situate teaching as a dialogical undertaking. So whether it be being in the top corner where we are looking at, in the top left corner, sorry, with seeing student input, we see student input, I think, in all of these to a certain degree, because we're looking at how our instructors have a vested interest in our experience as students within the York University community. For myself, it's been great as well, just because I am an elementary school teacher too. So it's been great being able to see how all of these can be traversed so differently. But like I said, without students, you know, this conversation doesn't happen. So I think that's what's really important about this model, and that's what it advocates for.
Yeah, thank you for for sharing that. And yes, it's the students really are at the students are the university, right? And so without students, we don't have jobs. And so I think it's the best we can at least do is make an effort to make their learning as inclusive and enjoyable as possible. Carolyn, do you want to wrap this up, I guess, with your final thoughts on where we're at?
Well, not surprisingly, I don't differ tremendously from my previous colleagues. I've been spiraling a bit between the scholarly teaching practice, teaching and sharing about teaching for many years. And it's only been recently that I've started to move up into the scholarship of teaching. And what the impetus there was, is when I started to teach collaboratively, it suddenly dawned on me that unlike scholarship in so many other disciplines, which tends to be solitary, a lot of scholarship in SOTL is collaborative. And since that light bulb moment, I'm now involved in 2 or 3 SOTL projects that are collaborative projects with faculty in different contexts, which makes it for an enjoyable, more doable, more manageable process. And it also keeps that connection with the sharing about teaching. So the process of doing this SOTL research itself becomes part of these other processes as well. So it's very much an EE experience for the teacher doing the SOTL research, very meta. But that for me, the light bulb moment was that I don't have to do this by myself. I can do this collaboratively. And that just opened up a door that I thought was closed because of time, space, and the types of limitations we've been talking about.
That's great, thank you. And yeah, I think that's also an awesome point is, so many times you're thrust into teaching without any, real training or background. It's like, okay, teach. And teaching tends to be that private, kind of keep it internalized and don't want to necessarily talk about your teaching or share your practices. But research is all about, being that public facing and, you want to publish and get your name out there and, and research. And so that merging, right, of the collaboration and the public facing of scholarship of teaching and learning, of SOTL research, is still, bringing that private teaching into the light now. And so I think that's one of the one of the great aspects of SOTL itself. So what I'll do is just stop sharing so we can see ourselves back on this screen here. I just wanted to wrap up and to say thank you all very much to the 4 of you for joining me today. It's been great conversation, and I'm really excited about this document and kind of what it could potentially mean for the university and for our teaching practices moving forward. So I just wanted to thank you all for your time today, and looking forward to engaging with you on some other projects moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.